Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a very special guest on today, and I'll describe him briefly. He's one of the most prolific designers of his generation. He has over 4,000 designs in production, over 300 awards, and he's working in over 40 countries, which attests to his legend of design. Please join me in welcoming and celebrating Karim Rashid. Welcome.
Hi, Thomas. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the nice introduction.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
I'm always ready for 20 questions. So fire away. By the way, I didn't read the questions, even though you sent them to me. I much prefer to be spontaneous. So
Great. Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
I'm a designer, and I guess in a sense the broadest or pluralist way possible because I studied industrial design, product design. But I do everything from micro to macro. So I design small objects like watches or mobile phones or televisions to furnishings to interiors to buildings to products onward. So yeah, so no boundaries really. But I shape when I say design, I think what design does is sort of uh, shapes culture really.
Great. And just a quick note for the audience, if you guys are interested in more tangential episodes, please check out our recent episode with Yves Behar. That was a great episode. So question two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Well, I think that what makes me different is that I strive for originality. And it started as a child. I had this sort of issues when I was 5 or 6 that I felt quite different than others, even though we're all completely different from each other. And so I always had this drive to sort of not conform and to see what I'm capable of in a sense of an original contribution. So, and I'm still obsessed with originality, and it's a very difficult thing to do in the design profession.
Hmm. Great. Moving on to question three here. Why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
I was brought up in a home with a father who's a painter and a set designer for film and television. In fact, he even was set designer for CBC for many years. And our home was full of everything from his paintings to he designed the furniture in the home, and there was this sort of perpetual creativity going on in the home. So we had a coffee table with about 100 books on it, and it was everybody from you could imagine from Jean Carrege or Pierre Cardin all the way to Le Corbusier or Mahalinage or Picasso and onward. So as a very young child, I was exposed to all that, and I started drawing sort of nonstop since I was probably two or so. And I even had a sort of an epiphany at some point when I was about seven that I decided I would design things. So, and that was it. So I never really thought about doing anything else,
Hmm.
actually. So I'm sort of in a way fortunate that way. That's where my passion lies, and I never really had to sort of question um, my profession.
Great. Some people struggle with number four, but the question is, what does your future look like?
What's that? What is
Right.
what does your future look like?
Yeah.
Um, well, my future is probably going to be a continuum of what I've done up to date. I've been designing about 40 years now. Um, so I will just keep going. It's definitely not retirement. I actually don't even believe in the notion of retirement. But I think my future is that now, because of technology and the way the world is changing sort of overnight, especially in the design profession, that I think I'm becoming more of a sort of cultural editor, if that makes sense, than a designer. And my future sort of lies in that I really want to disseminate my knowledge and passion, really. In other words, encourage creative people to sort of really think in an original way and to really start to make and shape change in the world. So. I think I need to be my future is to be more proactive.
Great. That segues nicely into number five, which is what we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Place at one time for all creatives, like if you go back to the turn of the century in Vienna, it was, or even in the 1800s, every musician had to go to Vienna, for example. And not just because Mozart was there, but because it was the center of the world actually for classical music. And then in turn, there was a time when everybody had to run to Dresden, Germany, and go study at the Bauhaus. And the Werkbund and Bauhaus in Germany were really at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. And it goes on this way, right? There was always a place to go. My father, he immediately went in the 50s from Cairo to Paris because he was a painter, and every painter went to Paris, and that period was a phenomenon, let's say, for fine art. So we always had to place meant to go where you can excel, let's say, in what you want to do or in your profession or in your passion. But place doesn't mean that anymore, right? But now you can be anywhere, exist in any part of the world, and be contributing and do something that really, touches people's lives out there. So, and that reminds me of what was his name? Beck. His first record he did was two turntables and a microphone, and it was considered the first piece of music ever done strictly on a laptop.
Mhm.
And we're talking about, I think, late 80s or early 90s, early 90s. And in a very small town in America, and nobody, he inevitably, to be a musician at one point, you would have had to gone somewhere. He didn't need to go anywhere. He produced something in his basement. So technology has afforded us to sort of exist in an omnipresent way anywhere in the world. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So in that regard, place is sort of over, I always say. It's even like the notion of when you say, oh, something's made in Italy versus made in China or made in Vietnam or made, it doesn't matter where something's made. If something is well done, the quality is there and it's beautiful. We consume it, we use it. It gives us, hopefully, it contributes to our world. So place is over, basically. I think we're all becoming somewhat nomadic, and
Mhm.
my personal thing is that I've traveled so much in the last 30 years that even though I live in New York, a lot of times spend more time out of the United States per year than I am in the country, meaning that I don't really see New York as my home. And I gravitated and went to New York for the same reason I talked about earlier. I went there to think that I would get ahead in the design profession by going there, but that was back in 1993. Today, it doesn't really matter where you are.
Mhm.
So place is a sort of a non-issue.
Mhm. Great. Six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Oh, lots. um, I don't know if I should say very personal things, but I mean, number one is I think about this a lot because I eat well and I really take care of myself, and I exercise almost every day for the last 30 years. Like I barely miss a day onward. But I would have started that basically as a 10-year-old, you know? I would have worn sunscreen, for example, which back in the 70s was almost unheard of. You know? I probably would have never ate junk food in my life, but back then, junk food was the thing to eat, right? It was
Mhm.
all so new and innovative, 60s, 70s, even into the 80s. So, I mean, health-wise, I would have done things very, very differently to take care of myself even more than I do now. And I think the second thing would be that, you know, we waste a lot of time in life. And and I question even now, for example, education. For example, and I don't really know if I really needed to do 6 years of university and onward. In other words, I fell into the sort of, let's say, banal paradigm of the way we're supposed to go through life. You go to university and then you meet someone and you get married and on and on. I probably wouldn't have followed any of those protocols, and just be much freer, let's say, and and yeah, be freer. In other words, it's like Maslow's triangle. I would have worried less about societal pressure or less about accolades or less about financial stability, etc. And I would have just tried to go straight to the pinnacle, the top of the triangle, which is self-actualization. And I feel like I've reached a kind of self-actualization, but it took many, many, many years.
Mhm. Great. Seven, what's a day in your life like?
Every day is different because I'm perpetually on the go and perpetually in different cities in the world, and I'm working right now in about I guess about 40 cities, 40 countries. I mean, so it's always different, and the time zones are different. The only thing that's of consistency, let's say, is to try to get a really good 7.5 hours sleep, eat a very good, healthy, organic little yogurt and breakfast. Coffee's my consistency all day. I love glass of good organic red wine is consistency, and everything else is all over the place.
Mm.
And I draw every day, and what else do I work out every day, and I try to read every day, and that's about it. Yeah.
Great. Eight is around lifelong learning. It's still a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah. Okay. What did you say? Lifelong learning?
Lifelong learning.
That's like a vogue thing now. What does that mean?
It just means constantly updating yourself.
Oh, I see. Um, so okay, so that's lifelong learning is a popular topic, you said. Uh,
Hmm.
and how do I stay up to date? Well, I guess digitally, like probably like everybody else. I read the news digitally. I try to read informative stuff online constantly. I I look at TikTok. I glance at Instagram. I what else? I don't know, things just to kind of understand a lot more about what I think in information age we have these opportunities to have so much information and knowledge. So I try to just take advantages and try to learn as much as I can perpetually.
Great. So nine is about tools. Do you use both digital and analog tools?
Yes, I use both. Yeah, I'm brought up analog, and so I still draw constantly, and I even for a long time started trying drawing on iPads and on tablets, and I gave it up and I went back to paper, and I draw on paper nonstop every day. So I am analog in that regard, but in the digital way too, we use, and in my office, but I use with my staff and people, a lot of 3D tools and a lot of very nice technology actually to design. Yeah.
Great. Halfway number 10, work-life balance. How do you deal with it?
Well, I think I answered it in a way. I don't see work as work. I see it as my life in a way. So I'm, let's say, for forever working. In other words, passionate about what I do.
Mhm.
But since I have no other choice, it's like my destiny in a way.
Mm.
I don't really see it as work.
Mm.
It's like my mission, and so they are perpetually intertwined. And I what I like again about the sort of age in which we live in, the digital age has broken down this notion of 9 to 5 for a lot of people now, especially post COVID, where you can work at home. We know if you work at home, you don't sit there and work for 7 hours like you do in an office or 8 hours, right? So you start working in the evening instead, or you work early in the morning, and then for an hour you go off to the gym or whatever you do, meet a friend for coffee, etc. I think this sort of new way of living, the 24-hour clock has changed where it's sort of like, let me see if I can put some words to this. It's sort of like I'm on the planet now. This is what I'm involved in. These are the people I'm involved in. This is my contribution. This is what I do. This is what I enjoy. This is how I play. It all sort of just blurs.
Nice. I like that. So 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
Okay, that's your toughest question so far out of the 20. I don't know. I get depressed and shoot myself. I don't. Uh, I don't know what I would do. I mean, the only thing I really would have loved to have done in my life, but I have no talent at it, was be a musician.
Mm.
So when I was a teenager, I took up electric guitar for a year and dropped it. I took up saxophone, I dropped it. I tried to, have patience for piano. I wasn't really there. So I don't know if I don't have talent or I'm just sort of uh, don't have the patience.
Mm.
Um, so what I started doing actually when I was very young, 15 or so. I started DJing in a club in Toronto.
Mm.
And it was sort of fortunate because I was working in a record store. I was working in downtown Toronto at Sam the Record Man, which is law god, and I had access to so many records, and so many promotional copies would come in, and so the next thing you know, I found myself DJing, and I've still until I'm in fact I'll be DJing in April in Milan. I still DJ until today as a sort of side hobby, let's say.
Mm.
So yeah, so maybe I don't know, in another life I was a musician, or maybe my next life.
What would you not like to do with your career?
Hmm. What would I not like to do? Um, the first thing came to mind when you said that is I wouldn't like to design a gun, which I was offered to do 3 years ago. I turned it down. I decided that I want to make and do things, physical things in the world that give people a sort of an elevated sense of pleasure that brings better emotion to somebody, better function, better comfort, all these things. So does that answer that question? I don't know.
Yeah, it does. So how about a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Um, my favorite, I have a lot of favorite words that I made up. Actually, one of them ended up in the dictionary, which is blobject, which was the idea that an object that has no straight lines on it.
Mm.
But my favorite quote is to be is to create. That
Mm.
I think that every one of us have the capacity of original thought and original creation.
Mm.
In other words, we're all capable of it, and we should all be pursuing that. In other words, if we were all being ourselves and being original, we'd probably have far, far fewer issues and problems in the world.
Mm.
So I never like this idea that there's a notion of fitting in, that we all have to sort of fit into some so-called societal condition, that we're all free, and we are all uh, original beings.
Mm.
So to be is to create, and we're all here to create. And every act we do is a form of creation.
Mm. Great. How about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
It is what it is. I cannot stand that when people say that.
Mm.
That's giving in. What if, when people are always projecting that way and thinking like, what if, what if, what if, because that's based on fear and that just holds you back. Oh yeah, what I wanted to make a T-shirt of this. It can't get much better than this.
Mm.
Okay, I cannot stand when people say that because it can always get better.
Mm. Okay, you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Mm. Original.
What keeps you up at night?
Um, Nothing really. I
Mm.
sleep very well.
What's a dream you're chasing?
To to touch the planet, to make one's mark, original mark, while they're here.
Mm. What inspires you?
Everything, everything inspires me. I all day, all I have is creative thoughts about what I see around me, spaces, people, the way we interact, the problems in the world, all of it, from good and bad, inspire me.
Great. And last couple here, number 19. Any advice you'd like to share?
Yes. And this is probably a little more geared towards, let's say, my profession, but
Mm.
in general, for let's say young designers or people who are going to study or want to do design, that don't waste your time in a profession if you find that you're not good at it. And basically, the advice is don't waste your time. And with that said, I would even add today, there's not even a reason to go to university anymore. Don't waste your time. There's no real need for it. You can educate yourself exceptionally well, and if even better, just digitally online or finding a right mentor or somebody that you can learn from.
Mm.
So, which actually goes back way back to one of the questions you asked me about if I did it all over again. Um, so that would be my advice.
Mm. Great. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
What's your call to what? Sorry.
Call to action.
Oh, okay. Keep tabs on me. I'm probably most proactive on Instagram, and anybody can direct message me, and I answer everybody. I probably answer 50 people a day at
Mhm.
least. Um, so that would be the probably, yeah, yeah.
Great. Well,
And
thank,
I
yeah,
just want to add to that. I travel. I do like, for example, coming up between now and October, I got 16 lectures planned around the world. So if you're here that I'm speaking somewhere, I would love for you to come and see me.
great. Well, thanks so much for joining. I mean, real true privilege to have you on the show. Really kind of remarkable advice. Thank you so much.
Thomas, thanks a lot for inviting me. Okay.